Buddy, welcome back to another episode of the Periodic Table. This is the weekly science news show where we talk about the science news of the week. And are we experts by any means? No, absolutely not.
Yes.
Well, maybe one of our experts today is an expert on. I called him an expert already. So our expert is an expert who's not an expert, but he might be an expert on corgis. But we're going to get to that guy in just a second. But for me, well, I'm of course your host, Brandon Hanna. I'm a mechanical engineer. You might also have seen me hosting over at AfterBuzz TV, the Popcorn Talk Network, or you might have seen me over at the movie trivia Schmoedown. But today we are here talking about science. And to help me talk about science is said expert that I mentioned just a moment ago. Oh, let me pull up all the great things he's done. He's a host. He's a producer. He is the founder of the PJ Campbell Network and head writer for the movie trivia Schmoedown. It is the one and only PJ Campbell. Welcome.
Well, hello, everyone. It's good to be here. I like hanging out, talking science. It's been a little bit, but thanks for having me back. It's going to be fun tonight, man. It's weird to be doing this in the middle of the week, by the way. I was used to doing this on Saturday.
Yeah, we're trying something new, doing this show on a weeknight, trying to free up my weekends a bit. Maybe I did a little bit of a Twitter poll, seeing what might work better for the viewers at home, and it was skewed towards more the weekdays. So we'll see how these episodes do going forward, and we might adjust accordingly in the future. We'll see, but enough about my scheduling and about my day-to-day life. Let's go over to our next guest. You saw him here 2 weeks ago. He is the one, the only incredible Michael Chu, the host of Chew on This.
What is up, guys? I'm back again to talk some science with you all. It was a fun time last time. Me and Brandon hypothesized, having a helicopter trip in space, and we'll see what other craziness ensues today.
Exactly. A lot of craziness to ensue. We have an amazing show for you all today, and I am excited to talk to Mikey and PJ about it. First and foremost, we have scientists remotely controlled the social behavior of mice using light. That sounds a little bit of Men in Black deneuralizer situation to me. We're going to get into that. We also have most people will add something even when subtracting makes more sense. So this is going to be a fun little article about how our brains work and why we like to add stuff when problem solving as opposed to subtracting it, which who knew? And of course, we do have a special segment for this week. I am bringing back Scientist Spotlight, talking all about an amazing college student from Uganda who brings her computer science education home. But before we get into all that good stuff, let's jump right back up to our first story of the week. Scientists remotely controlled the social behavior of mice with light. So guys, with the help of headsets and backpacks on mice, scientists are using light to switch nerve cells on and off the rodents' brains to probe the animal's social behavior, according to a new study. And this is coming from Science News, guys. As always, the links to all the articles are in the description down below if you want to check them out and read them for yourself. But guys, these remote control experiments are revealing new insights on the neural circuitry underlying social interactions, which is supporting previous work that suggests minds in sync are more cooperative. And researchers reported this online just yesterday, May 10th, in Nature Neuroscience. So before we dive any deeper into this article, PJ, I want to throw it over to you. What were your overall impressions reading this article? Did anything really stand out to you as particularly interesting? Are you excited about these developments in neurological studies and behaviors and how maybe brains can be manipulated using light? Are you afraid? Put on your tinfoil hat.
I'm afraid. I'm 100% afraid. This is the same thing we've talked about in the past where I'm like, are we cutting off more than we can chew here? Like, are we messing with people's minds? No, actually, it's interesting because the human body is weird, man. And with being able to go into the body and like mess with neuroscience to figure out certain things that we're trying to figure out. You could find help for epilepsy. You could find all sorts of things if we're, depending on how you use this technology. Now, also to your point, it could be like Men in Black. Maybe we're just erasing people's memories. Maybe we're moving closer to eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. You never know. But it is interesting because, again, look at what we can do with science. Like going deeper into people's neuropsyches and stuff in a way that maybe we didn't think we could is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. It is really fascinating. Of course, in the thumbnail of this video, I did put a shot of Will Smith from Men in Black. And I don't know if you noticed, guys, I was particularly proud of this one. I had the reflection of the mice in his sunglasses. I'm kind of an artistic vision, if you will. But enough about me. Let's focus on brainwashing these mice. Over to you, Mikey. I want to know your thoughts. Did anything in particular stand out to you in this article? Are you excited about this new development? Are you concerned about future technology? And I don't know how we might be ending up in a Black Mirror situation because of this.
Tell me why that was my immediate thought when reading this story, that we're one step closer now to starring in our own Black Mirror episode. As PJ mentioned, there could be some positive implications that come out of this. Like, we're starting off small with rats and mice, obviously, but the fact that this is being primed to be tried out on humans at some point is a little alarming. But, you know, this is a story I would love to keep an eye on as time goes on and kind of see where this goes. Hopefully not too crazy, guys.
Yeah, I mean, the article seems to have a optimistic outlook, focusing on this is something that can boost and improve social behaviors among groups of, you know, the same species, if you will. But to kind of dive into the science of it a little bit, this article states that the new devices rely on something called optogenetics, which is a technique that researchers use bursts of lights to activate or suppress brain nerve cells or neurons, often using tailored viruses to genetically modify cells so that they respond to illumination. And scientists have used optogenetics to probe neural circuits in mice and other lab animals to yield insights on how they might work in humans, which is obviously what we're talking about here, guys. What could possibly go wrong? But to go a little more, the next paragraph here says optogenetic devices often feed light to neurons via fiber optic cables, but such tethers can interfere with natural behaviors and social interactions. While scientists recently developed implantable wireless optogenetic devices, these depend on relatively simple remote controls or limited sets of pre-programmed instructions. So we're talking about implants going into mice's brains, if you will, eventually maybe human brains, because right, PJ, you were talking about kind of the kind of medical treatment purpose of such a device, such a piece of technology, how, you know, there are a lot of people with neurological conditions that cause them a lot of pain, cause them unable to function normally in day-to-day lives, and maybe these neurological diseases can potentially be treated with, boom, like put an implant in the back of your neck, give you a flash of light, and things get course corrected. I don't know. I think that's obviously like the very optimistic thinking of where they could go with this technology. But for me, I think unless you're signing up as an experiment to be a figurative lab rat, I don't think you have anything to worry about people switching off on and off your memories, Men in Black style, unless they already put the implants in the back of our heads and then erased our memory.
You never know, man.
Encounter.
You never know.
Ooh, but guys, before I jump down a science fiction rabbit hole, I want to throw it back to you, PJ. Is there anything that you really learned from this article that was maybe something you weren't familiar with in this field of study before, or just anything in general that you want to talk about that we haven't covered yet on this story?
It's just so odd because, I mean, the last time I was here, we were also talking about a very similar device when it was you, me, and Ellis, and it was about like implanting things where you could put information into people's brains. And this is immediately where my mind went to, where why do we keep messing with people's brains? Why is that the first thing that we think of? But at the same time, again, like there are potential benefits to doing anything like this. And that's the cool thing about science, is that science makes the world go round. You know, hey, we're kind of controlling COVID because of science, you know, that helps people. And so reading this, it was like, I wonder what practical implications we can actually use. Like, I had never really thought about how we interact with people and like being able to turn that on and off, and like how do you want people to interact with people? Think about that. Someone like using this to be like, well, we want you to interact a certain way with another person. That's kind of weird and terrifying and cult-like, but at the same time, maybe it's good to, depending on how you use it, for people who are troubled, is a nice way to say it, you know, and the implications of what that could mean.
Yeah, I think obviously they might be having a little bit of fun with the mice, learning about how they socially interact, how this technology can change the ways that they socially interact with one another. But what I think they're really trying to do is use this technology to better understand human biology, better understand our own nervous systems.
Mhm.
That way we can better diagnose certain conditions and diseases in the future, and um, maybe even better treat those diseases. And so, Mikey, I want to throw it over to you next. You have the same optimistic. I don't know, apocalyptic. That sounds something like a word they would have said in this article. Do you have a optimistic view of this discovery as I do, or are you a little more concerned about the potential? I mean, I know we kind of already talked over the black mirrorness, if you will, but I do think that it is to be a little more specific. I do think, and the article does say this could be used to better inform better diagnostics and therapeutics in humans. So I kind of want to touch on that specifically. Are you excited about the potential implications of how this technology can help doctors and their patients in the medical field? Because I know I'm kind of someone who has been in and out of the doctor's office lately, and I have been seeing a neurologist for certain things, trying to figure out some stuff, and so this kind of really piques my interest immediately, because I'm like, wow, if you go to the doctor, you have a specific neurological problem, right, that you can't necessarily understand. Maybe something like this can be used to better, understand and treat it. So I don't know if you could speak maybe specifically on that, if you think that this is something to be optimistic about, where someone like me who's been going to the doctors a lot can be like, hey, maybe this could help in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that, I mean, all jokes aside, that this could be a very, very positive implementation. Use in the therapy space is what my brain kind of went to as well, as we're learning more about as therapy is becoming more common, we're seeing different types of therapy emerge. And to think that only a single burst of light can completely activate or suppress neurons kind of opens your mind to both the good and the bad, right? Could we be in some workspace where we're all just mindless drones and robots, or we could possibly be, in a therapy type of space where, we're going over trauma and somehow, not necessarily erasing that, but somehow doing something with the neurons to lessen the effects of that. Yeah, I mean, to see where this goes, it could go really any way. But yeah, I do think that the positives outweigh what negatives could be, as long as we all keep each other in check here as scientists. Please don't insult us.
Yeah, certainly. Very well said. I think it's a really interesting, fun article to kind of dive into and get us started on today's show. Get us all thinking, get the creative brain juices flowing, get our conspiracy theories out of the way early, so we can talk about some more wholesome scientific news stories for our next couple of topics. And guys, I did remove this little nipple cap off my water because I realized how awkward that must have been looking. So now I'm going to enjoy my Fiji water like a normal.
It's almost like subtracting things can be helpful.
Would you look at that?
That might have been our greatest segue ever introduced on this show. But before we do talk about how subtracting things might be helpful, I just want to thank everyone currently watching or watching on the replay at home. We have some amazing people in the chat. This guy, Brandon, Hanna, PJ Campbell. Oh, that's us. We were in there earlier. But we also have Jake Iacovetta, Jeremiah Morris, of course, Sabrina Ramirez, all in the chat. Welcome, guys. If anyone else is watching, throw a comment in the chat. Let us know we're there. We'd love to talk to you about science. Get in on the conversation. Like I like to say, this is one big virtual science classroom. And as you do, if you enjoy being in this classroom, hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you want to be here with us every single week. Hit that little notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And as I mentioned, if you're watching after the fact, feel free to leave a comment down below. The conversation doesn't end when the show ends. It's a continuous learning exercise of fun, I will say. And speaking of fun, let's go back to PJ's really fun segue about how subtracting things can be helpful, because, well, most people, you guys would add something, okay, instead of subtracting something, even when subtracting makes more sense. according to this article from Science News for Students. Picture a bridge made of Lego blocks. Okay, this is the example given right off the bat here. One side has 3 support pieces, so we're on one side of the bridge, 1, 2, 3, and the other side has only 2, 1, 2. So our bridge is like a little lopsided, guys. All right, how would you stabilize the bridge? Well, most people would add a piece to the short stack, according to this new study. But why not remove a piece from the taller stack, like I just did with my water bottle? When it comes to Lego blocks, ingredients in a recipe, or words in an essay, people prefer to add, not subtract. But people can apparently be nudged to subtract by effectively changing their preference. Changing that preference seems to require reminders or rewards, or maybe in the future, flashes of light to your implant. Who knows? Who knows, guys? All right. No. Okay, don't go down there. Okay, so before I get any further into this article, Mikey, I want to throw it over to you first this time. What did you think of this story? Did you maybe learn something about yourself? I know I just had a great example of me subtracting something here, but I read this and immediately thought to myself, I am 100% guilty of this. I'm just like everybody else. I would have added another piece to the other side and had 3 blocks per side of my Lego bridge. I mean, they got me. That's what I would have done. But why does my brain think this way? Did you ask yourself these same questions? And did anything else in this article really pop out to you?
Absolutely. And I mean, it makes sense with reasoning that just our brain, like addition implies positive, whereas subtraction implies negative. So we just wouldn't go there. Normally, it would just be not in our first instinct to do that, because I don't know, I'm obviously, Brandon, you felt that way. I don't know how you felt, PJ, but same. I of course would have added the extra Lego block there. That would be the only rational thought I would have had. But then to see where this article kind of goes, we don't have to dive into it yet because I know we're going to get there. But even with negative, like having to pay for certain things, we still go to the root of adding rather than our brain going to subtracting. It's interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You know, the article says people don't even consider subtracting something at all, and I'm right in that same boat. I mean, in some cases it does make sense, right? Let's say if you have like a wobbly table, it's like, am I going to sand the 3 of the 4 legs of the table down, or am I just going to take a little piece of paper and stick it under the 4th leg that's a little shorter than the others? But got you there, science. But before I say any more silly things, PJ, I want to throw it over to you next. What was your overall impression on this article? Were you just surprised to learn this fact about yourself, or are you one of the few people that does subtract in a particular
I am not one of the few people who subtracts by any stretch of the imagination if you look behind me. But I hadn't really thought about it, but I think Michael's right. When I was reading the article, my first thought was the reason we always add is because subtraction always sounds very negative. Like you take things out of your life, you lose things, that's subtracting from your life, and that feels weird. So I never even would have thought about, oh yeah, we just add things. I mean, look at every movie sequel that comes out. It's always bigger. You're putting more people in, you're putting more effects in. Like, it's always bigger is better. That's the mindset even in Hollywood for stuff. Sometimes it's better to just like tone back, I guess. And I had never thought about this. I never would have in a million years, because again, we all think about just adding things. That's just because it sounds more positive. I never would have known.
Yeah, I mean, so apparently it says here Converse was actually part of a team that found this bias when they asked 1,585 study participants to tackle 8 puzzles and problems. Each could be solved by either adding or removing things. One puzzle required shading or erasing squares on a grid to make to make some pattern symmetrical. And I immediately kind of tried to visualize myself in the situation. I'm like, yeah, I would shade in, I wouldn't erase. Why would I erase?
Absolutely.
I don't like erase. When I was in school taking notes, I know every teacher was like, hey, use pencils so you can erase. But the moment teachers started letting me use pens, I used a pen and just crossed out. Dude, I ain't got time to flip it over and do.
I'm left-handed. Always the pen, because when you're writing left-handed and you're using a pencil, you're getting the graphite on the side of your hand, and it's the worst. And fuck pencils.
But like in another puzzle in this study, people could add or subtract items on a list of intended destinations to improve their vacation experience. I mean, in that situation, what do you get? You would rather add? I mean, I guess you want to like cram as much stuff into your vacation.
But then would you want to add, because you could take your time slower with certain destinations, certain places, certain activities, you know?
Yeah, this is one that really has me pondering. You know, if I was in this situation, I don't know which side of the fence I would fall on, but either way, in each case, the vast majority of people chose to add instead of subtracting. It says here, for instance, of the 94 participants who completed the grid task, 73 added squares, another 18 removed squares, and 3 simply reworked the original number of squares. I want to know who these 3 are, these outside the box thinkers.
The true geniuses of this experiment.
Yeah, those are the people we should be talking to. But as I mentioned earlier, they did figure out how to nudge people in the direction of subtracting rather than adding. And it says here, in one test, the team offered 197 people wandering around a crowded university site $1 to solve a puzzle. People viewed a Lego structure. It had a figure standing atop a platform with a large pillar behind her. A single block on one corner of the pillar supported a flat roof, and researchers asked the participants to stabilize the roof to avoid squashing the figure. But the researchers warned 98 participants that each piece you add cost 10 cents. Yet only 40 of them thought to remove the destabilizing block so that the roof could rest on top of the wide pillar below. The other 99 participants were told about the 10-cent cost of each extra block, but these people also learned removing pieces is free. That cue prompted 60 of them to remove the block. So, guys, I know this is a lot of words and kind of like hard to visualize, especially with me trying to talk about it. But I think this is really interesting, saying that adding pieces cost money and removing pieces doesn't. That kind of forces people to think counterintuitively to what they would originally do. And I think I'd be the same way. But I think those kinds of problems are exactly certain things that kind of excite me about engineering in particular, where like you have these design constraints and financial constraints, and you have to try to like work around them and think creatively, because you know, sometimes it's just easy to slap some duct tape on a problem and call it a day. But all of a sudden, if you like, oh, you can't use that type of material, or you can't do this, or you can't do that, like forces you to think a little more creatively, even though I do love that duct tape, guys. And it is cheap, so it does check off one of the boxes. But before I go on another rant about duct tape, PJ, I want to throw it over to you. What did you think about incentivizing people to subtract rather than add? I found this particularly interesting because, like I said, from the engineering perspective, it forces people to have to think a little more creatively.
Well, that's what I thought was so interesting, is like they even said in the article that the people who were given almost too much information would just keep adding stuff. But when it was like, well, actually, what if we just told you that you spend nothing if you take stuff away, and forcing people to be like, oh, wait, maybe we can do things differently. Like that's kind of the smart thinking we need. And like you said, it's the outside of the box thinkers. Like in that situation, had I been given that same information, I probably would have done the same thing, because you're trying to think about how can I save myself some money, even if it's $1 and you're trying to save that 10 cents, suddenly you're like, oh, what can I do? And it does create some interesting perspective, like you were talking about with engineers and like the people who build bridges and buildings, like they are in these kind of constraints where they can only spend so much money. So how are we going to construct something that's going to stay together, but also soundly? And it's stuff I never really thought about.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. I do see people talking about my nipple cap here in the chat, saying never remove the nipple cap. Hashtag Nick Cap for life. Hashtag Team Nip Cap. No, I removed it. It looks awkward on camera, guys. I have my dignity for crying out loud. But no, PJ, like you're perfectly right, and you brought up a great point about how that information overload kind of confuses people and makes me add stuff even more. than they normally would, as opposed to like keeping the information simple. And we have JJ Winward joining us in the chat saying, I suddenly understand hoarders. And that's exactly right, because they do have it as an example in this article when like cleaning and organizing your home, people actually, even in that case, add stuff to your home to keep it organized as opposed to removing stuff. So it's kind of like that same part of the brain, that same way of thinking applies to so many different areas of our life. I think they even mentioned pollution and littering and all kinds of crazy stuff like that, and politics to a certain degree. Mikey, I'd like to throw it over to you next. First of all, are you team nip cap or are you not? And second of all, did this article really make you go like, wow, like we have like JJ Winward in the chat saying he understands hoarders. I'm over here going like, wow, this is exactly why engineers are forced to think creatively. Like, did you have like a aha moment reading this article?
Absolutely. Well, first, team nip cap all the way. Brandon, you'll have your dignity, nip cap or not.
You.
Just put it back on, man. But going back to the article, it's funny because when I was reading about how we add things into our homes to help to organize, my immediate thought was how many baskets I've bought from Target to put stuff into, and how much worse that has made my rooms look in my home. So yes, it's true. I am guilty of this extremely. And my other thought was actually going back to the thing with the 10 cents. It makes you wonder, at what money amount do you guys think that people would subtract instead of spend the 10 cents to put an extra piece? That's the test I want to see.
That would be an interesting test for sure, because the test doesn't really work in the case of organizing your home, because you got to go out and you got to purchase these bins from Target, right? So in that situation, you still spend the money to do it. However, maybe if there was like somebody standing next to you and kind of reinforce the idea, saying it's going to cost you time and money to drive to Target and buy a bin, but it's going to cost you nothing to chuck it in the dumpster. Then you sit and you think, you go, nothing, you say.
Sounds a lot better,
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, this turned out to be a really fun article, and I'm so glad that we talked about it. And I think hopefully it kind of helps us all gain a better understanding of how our own brains operate, our own way of problem solving, and where we are all definitely super guilty. PJ pointing to Blu-rays behind him.
Yep, 100%. I have my own issues.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, hey, you can't subtract your Blu-rays, because then like you don't have Blu-rays anymore.
I don't. That's what I was saying.
True.
I need my movie. If I got rid of my movie collection, who am I as a human being? Let's be real.
Exactly. See, take that one, science. We got you there. With that being said, I think it is time already to move on to our special segment for the week. So, guys, we have brought back Scientist Spotlight, and I think we have a pretty inspiring story here. A college student from Uganda brings her computer science education home, and this is coming from CBS News. So a student at the University of California, Berkeley, who is getting her master's in computer science, decided to take on a side project during the pandemic lockdown. So think about problem solving and limitations, and things come your way in life like the pandemic, and you have to kind of think creatively and try to think outside the box to do something good. And this is exactly what this student did. A full scholarship launch. Gloria, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, but I'm going to try my best. Gloria Tumushabe's engineering and computer science studies at a top U.S. school. But she says too many others in her native Uganda, which is 14,000 miles away, are left behind. And this is a quote from Tumushabe saying, "I felt like I won the lottery when I got the letter that said I got into Berkeley and that I got a scholarship. I don't think I slept." But in Uganda, 77% of the population is under 25 years old, guys, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. 77% of the population under 25 years old, and opportunities are limited. So you're thinking about like all these people in one nation having to join the workforce around the same time to replace people who a much smaller amount of people who are leaving the workforce, right? So there's just not enough jobs at the end of the day, it's just the numbers game, right? For everyone. And so opportunities are very limited. And especially for women in a lot of homes, it's still very traditional. The woman does more of the housework and the cleaning and all that. And this is still part of the quote from Tumushabe. Many of those who do attend school were set back by the pandemic. And Martha Atwine is one of them. As a girl, I basically had to stay at home and do housework, she said. That's all I could do in a pandemic. But a world away, Tumushabe decided to help. And she says, I thought maybe this is my moment to actually start teaching and really empower these people to learn computer science. So she spread the word back home that she would teach girls how to write computer code. Gloria told, this is a quote here, Gloria told me to reach out to other girls that were interested. Very many of my friends were interested, but they didn't have laptops. So they had to figure out how to get computers. And you know, a couple students were able to get hand-me-downs and so forth, but Wi-Fi was very spotty and kept some girls away. So Tumushabe pitched in there too. She says, I'm so lucky I have a scholarship that gives me a stipend. So part of my stipend goes towards the girls' internet. And a GoFundMe account followed. And now instead of teaching one class, we're actually teaching 2 classes, Tumushabe said. And her program is called Afro Femme Coders and now includes mentors from Silicon Valley. And so I thought this is just such a great story for this particular special segment of Scientist Spotlight, because Gloria's story, I think, is absolutely incredible to take her own amazing, incredible opportunity and scholarship and stipend money that she gets from it to help people back home in her native country of Uganda, particularly women who are struggling to get into the workforce, teaching them how to do computer coding. Is something that is really, really cool. So, PJ, I want to throw this over to you. Were you really inspired by this story? Do you think that you know, that I don't know, like I just think that because for me, I was inspired by the story. I think obviously computer science and computer coding and all that stuff is going to be there's a lot of people going into that field. It's very much in demand, especially in the technological age that we live in now. So, you know, I don't know. I'm just I'm really blown away by stories like this, and so I just want to hear your thoughts, PJ.
I mean, I love this story. Everything Gloria is doing is such a big deal because I think in a world where so many people leave things behind, it would have been easy for her to get a scholarship, leave, and never look back. But instead, she was like, how can I help the people that I left behind? How can I help women in my country who don't get a chance to help themselves? How can I help push people forward? And to find a way to do that, it was really great. And kind of the funny thing is we were talking about adding and subtracting before this. They added an extra class. That's the kind of stuff. That's where additions are great because she's trying to help more people, man. And I just think that something like this is so profound because, again, it's really easy for people to turn their back when they finally break away from the thing that, you know, could be seen as holding them back. And you never have to help anyone. But to do that is so noble. And she's putting people first in a world that, as technology continues to expand, people are going to get left behind if they're not literate. And so for her to be able to help them get technologically literate, to help them push forward and find new paths in life is so fucking cool, especially considering so many of them are just meant to be like housewives and now they can be so much more than that.
Yeah. 100%, very well said. You're right. You make a good point about this. This is a case where addition is better than subtraction. And it is truly remarkable, and the friends and students that Gloria was able to help during the pandemic are going to be applying to U.S. colleges, and I think as part of having mentors from Silicon Valley helping a part of this program, I think this is going to be hopefully something really great that will give a lot of really, really intelligent women an opportunity to come to the United States and get an amazing education, and then, like Gloria, use that education to help others. And it really makes me want to get off my butt and do something productive. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what did I do this pandemic? Is like I ate a lot of frozen pizza early on.
I mean, as one does in the middle of a pandemic. So,
honestly,
as one does. So I'm stumbling. That's what I'm doing. I think it's because I put the nipple back on this for you guys. I think that's what it is. Before I stumble any further, Mikey, I want to throw it over to you. How inspired were you by this story? Did any part of this story really stand out to you that really impressed you, or just like overall thoughts?
I mean, like PJ said, what Gloria is doing is extremely brave to have the opportunity to come to the US and then to go back to fuel her nation's education and help these women out is awe-inspiring. It truly is. And yeah, she's doing the best possible thing she could be doing and inspiring young minds. I know, Brandon, you said you're not doing anything. Dude, you're inspiring people to learn about science by doing this show. And that's the same thing what Gloria's doing. She's inspiring people. They're seeing her go to the US, come back with this knowledge and wanting to spread that knowledge around in the most positive way possible. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the compliment. I certainly hope this is helping inspire some people in the world of science. It's hard because I'm super inspired by this story. Like I keep saying over and over again, it's hard to not keep on saying that. And it makes it to a point where it's like, wow, like I'm not a woman, I'm not a person of color, I'm not an immigrant. I don't know what these struggles of having to struggle to find a computer, to find Wi-Fi, to learn computer coding, to help you get into a college, to get out of a bad situation in a country that is struggling getting people into the workforce just because of how young the general population is. I can't imagine, these are problems that I'm trying my best to like sympathize with and understand, but it's like, I want to like make sure that I speak on it, intelligently and thoughtfully. And so, I'm kind of like at like a loss for words. Cause I'm like, I just want to like give Gloria all the credit in the world and give her this scientist spotlight on this show. Because I mean, she really deserves it. And there's so many amazing, scientists and human beings out there doing some incredible work. And it's nice to see a little bit of, optimism out of a bad situation, taking the pandemic and taking the time that you have at home to do something really, really positive.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So it is a really great story. And I hope it inspires you all as well. With that being said, that just about wraps up our show here today. I thought it was an absolutely great show. I had a lot of fun talking science with you guys today, and I hope you did too. And I do see Aiden Kostic joined us in the chat. Welcome. We're just wrapping up here, Aiden. I hope you enjoyed the last 7 minutes of the show as much as I did. But before we leave, PJ Campbell, let's throw it over to you. If the people want to find you in between your amazing appearances on this show, where can they look for you online?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PJ_Campbell, and you can find me over at the PJ Campbell Network. We do all sorts of stuff over there. Go check it out. And you can find me at the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. Hey, I write the questions over there. Be nice to the writers. We're only human. Thanks for having me back, man. It's been a little bit, but I always like talking a little bit of science.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming back on. I love having you on this show. You're always like so thoughtful and you bring a great perspective, and I really love having you on and appreciate it. And same goes for you, Michael Chu. That rhymed. Look at that. Thank you so much.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me for the second show in a row. Super great to have you here. Love all the insight you bring and the enthusiasm that you bring with it. If people want to see more of that insight and enthusiasm, where can they find you online?
Well, first of all, I appreciate that. And Aiden in the chat, I appreciate you, dude. My fits are inspired by you, my friend. So, you're looking fresh as well. But you guys can find me at Michael Chu on YouTube. Me and Brandon, I just had him on for an episode of Chew on This, where we get into more science, a lot of movie talk, and his origin into the Schmoedown. It was a great time. And that's kind of what I do for the time being on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter at Michael Chu for real, and at Letterboxd at just Michael Chu.
Awesome, guys. Go support PJ. Go support Michael Chu. They do really great stuff, and you should go check it out. And if you want to check out more of me, well, I'm of course your host, Brandon Hanna. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BrandonHanna07. If you're watching, you've already found me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BrandonHanna. Once again, guys, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you'd like to stay up to date. Hit that little notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Join us back for science here every week. I had a lot of fun having you guys out there. I can't really see any of you. I see some of you in the chat, but like other than that, I'm just looking at a webcam. But I know that you're there, and super happy to have you all here with you and my nipple cap on my water bottle. Let's start a new Twitter trend going. Are you hashtag Team NipCap or are you not? Let me know your thoughts in my mentions. I also have a Patreon, guys, patreon.com/Brandon Hanna. Actually, right after this show at 8 p.m. Pacific time, I believe Mikey is going to join me over on my Patreon. We're just going to do a Patreon hangout live stream where we're just going to chill for an hour. Maybe I'll answer some questions. We'll talk about some pop culture, whatever's on your mind, guys. We're just going to hang out. We're going to vibe out on a Tuesday night. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that, patreon.com/Brandon Hanna, head on over there, join us. It's going to be a great time. And so with all that being said, I think I've checked off all the boxes. I've promoted all the things I have to promote. We've plugged all the things we need to plug. So once again, guys, I will see you all next week to talk more about science, but this is going to be a science redundancy. But as I always say, thank you for taking time out of your day for this moment of science.